I think Mary Claude said quite a bit about the knowledge of the Two Row Wampum from what she has. And what she has, of course, is a lot more than what your average person knows about the Two Row Wampum. But the Two Row Wampum is a thing that is in your everyday lives without anybody actually knowing it, being aware of it. We'll talk about the history of the Two Row Wampum. The Two Row Wampum, of course, is something that was created by my ancestors, the Ganyangahaga, and it was then extended to the rest of the Five Nations Confederacy, who then sanctioned it, and it was for the contract with the peoples whose bloodlines who come from across the Great Waters. The people who first came here to Turtle Island, the history is distorted, it's not known. I will identify that the people who have come from across the Great Waters have not known any truth for 500 years. You have not known what has been happening in the world. You're aware of what has been happening to you and what you have been doing, but unaware completely of what is happening in the world to the world. If we look at if we consider life to be going in one direction, well, the non-native society is going in the opposite direction from the evolution of life, because that society, its conduct, its behavior is destructive, not only of itself, but when it destroys itself, it then destroys the environment in which we live in. So when such people came here, of course, as you know, that the original condition of the people who first came here, they were sick, they were dying, they were unable to survive here. So of course our people helped them, saved them, gave them the medicines, gave them food, shelter, all of that. Showed you how to live here in this world. Because the reality is at the time, it was impossible for your ancestry to survive here. They would not have lived. And if that would have happened, then we would not be sitting here today under the conditions of which we are sitting here. Now we can say after 500 years that, well, we're sitting here and we're together. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. The people that are sitting here together with us, they are pulling out of your society. They are pulling out of your false governmental structures, your false education, your false religious systems. The people are removing themselves from those things. And as they do, they find the only reality, or they find the true reality, and that is through bridging the gap between the societies through the Two Row Wampum to find out exactly what the truth really is. And the truth is that the Degani Diohade, the Two Row Wampum, that today it is like a myth. It is something like a legend. It's something in history, something way back in time that people do not believe is a current reality. But as this was made first, presented to the non-native world in roughly the year 1616. It was first presented to the Dutch, and then the French, the British, the Americans, and until it's implemented here in so-called Canada. So this is the history of the Two Row Wampum in relation to the non-native people. But the Two Row Wampum goes back thousands of years. This is not something new to the world. 500 years might seem, oh, that's not new, that's kind of old. But this goes back over 2,000 years, over 1,500 years before the non-native came here. And what would be the purpose of the Two Row Wampum, the Degani Diohade? What it is basically very simple. You can see two rows, as she said. It makes it very simple, but it is very complex, because the Degani Diohade is created out of, from the Guyana Rasudat Goa, meaning the Great Law of Peace, which is the constitution of the Ganyangahaga of the Five Nations Confederacy. And that constitution is the law of creation. It is how all things in creation grow and evolve together, and it is how people, humans, are to fit into that environment in which we live in harmoniously. And so that is an agreement between yourself and creation. If you say you're a bulldozer operator, you have an agreement between yourself and creation, and your agreement is to destroy creation. You don't see it as an agreement, but your behavior towards the other is your interaction with the other. And if the other is the land, then that your behavior with the land is your contract. That's what you abide by. That's what you believe in. That's what you do. So that becomes your identity. So if you're a bulldozer operator, your identity is to destroy the land. If you're a CEO of a company, then your identity is to destroy the land. So the individuals are unaware in the non-native society of how to live in the world, of how to walk upon our Mother Earth. As you can see, just 500 years of being here, you know that in that time, the so-called Industrial Revolution, that's only about 150 years old. It's not very long right now, it's very young. And we know that within that time, the way that the entire world walks on our Mother Earth is a destructive way. It is out of balance. Understanding of the creation in which you are in. There is only destroying. And when we look at the world today, after 150 years of Industrial Revolution, we can see the destruction that it has caused. It is not imaginary. It is true. The entire world is in an environmental crisis because the conduct of the people of the world is so destructive that it has put our Mother Earth on the brink of death. The people of the earth are aware of this, but the people of the earth choose, they select to have self-inflicted cognitive dissonance, to deny what they are doing, to deny the outcome, which the outcome is known. If I drop this feather, the outcome is known, that it will hit the ground. If you dig up the coal, you dig up the uranium, it is known what will happen. It does not take a rocket scientist to figure these things out. Anyone, as a human, you are an expert. You do not have to have a PhD. You don't have to have all kind of diplomas and stuff for you to know. And for you to be able to use your expertise as a human to know that your behavior is destructive of the earth, destructive of the environment, that it is, in that sense, suicidal. So if you have a suicidal behavior, you kill yourself. If you want to kill yourself, that's fine. Kill yourself. But when you start to kill others, that is not your right. That is nobody's right. When you start to destroy the land, that is not your right. Because the current behavior of what this world is doing under democapitalism, that's democracy protecting capitalism, which is destroying our Mother Earth. Everyone is subdued under that through that false political system of voting. Oh, I vote for this guy, I vote for that guy. It doesn't matter who you vote for. It goes to the same destruction. And that behavior then, as it starts to destroy the earth, destroy the environment, it starts to, of course, destroy other people. So what the current generation is doing, and what the generation before you has done, and everyone, is literally right now, as you are making your millions of dollars, say, off of the stock market, or exploiting so-called our Mother Earth's resources, which is her life force. If you are exploiting her life force and making millions of dollars and all of all of the destruction that it causes. You are literally, right now at this moment, if you are sitting there eating, the food you are eating, you have just stolen out of the mouth of your future generations, of your grandchildren. But you do not care as long as you have the food in your mouth. But you say that you love your children as you steal the food out of their mouth. Cognitive dissonance. The world is aware of the actions that they are taking. Now, when these actions come into my home, which it has been here for 500 years, like I said, it's fine. Kill yourselves. If you all came here on boats just to kill yourselves on our beaches, hey, we would have let you. We would have said, go ahead if that's your intent. You want to kill yourselves? But apparently your ancestors wanted to live. They wanted to live. They wanted to love their children. They wanted their children to live, because we all want to see our children grow and be happy. But there is a lie in your society that you do not love your children. I don't care how much you say you love your children, your actions prove otherwise. Your actions prove to be destructive of your children. Now, if you want an individual wants to argue that point, fine. Examine your own individual behavior, and then examine your behavior within a collective, within a society, and examine and identify what your behavior is. Of course, you never do this. You don't want to. You have cognitive dissonance. So, when this comes to us, you say, hey, you know, you want to kill yourself? Fine. You want to kill us? No. You want to kill our children? No. This is what you have done. You have killed us. You have killed our children. You are reaching into the future generations and killing our children there in the future. So we cannot allow this. You cannot allow this. You cannot allow yourself to conduct yourself like this. So the Degradiohade originating back over 2,000 years within the native people, you have to consider, well, why was that? How does that go back 2,000 years within the people of the Longhouse? Is that prior to 2,000 years ago, the Ganyagahaga, the rest of the 5 nations, the people here in Turtle Island were at war. We were in the Dark Ages, the same as in the non-native world. It is a thing that is intrinsic to humanity, apparently. The same way, like when, if you're looking at a child as they're growing up, a young boy, you know, there's behaviors when they're children that maybe it's a little bit bad. You won't punish them or anything because you know they're children. But then when they get to be adolescents and they get violent and they start to become abusive and that nature, well then, you know that in adolescence, this is the time that this happens to people. It needs to be managed, but it does happen. And then, you know, when you reach adulthood, then you are to be over your adolescence. You're supposed to grow up. You're supposed to have proper relations with people. So anyways, war, obviously, is not proper relations. War obviously identifies that the people's minds are corrupted, that the society is corrupted. So our people were corrupted. Our people were at war, killing each other, and we got to the stage of identifying that, of course, our war was destroying our Mother Earth. And that's where we live. We happen to live in our Mother Earth. So if we're destroying the place where we live, you know, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that it's only going to be a matter of time before your whole house is destroyed. And if your house is destroyed, well, then you got no place to live, no shelter. So our people figured that, well, you know, we can't stay stupid. We can't remain stupid and stuck in war forever. So our people had to evolve out of the dark ages of war. And this is where the men had to climb up the evolutionary ladder to rise to the level of the women. And then together from there, they were able to walk together and evolve. The women, on their own, you may be at a level, but you cannot evolve. It is impossible for you to evolve as long as the men are devolved down the evolutionary ladder into the darkness of war, which is where you have been for over 2,000 years. You have been in the Dark Ages. You have to ask yourself, when did it stop? The Dark Ages consist of war, disease, famine, pestilence, all the worst human behaviors imaginable. When did that stop in the non-native societies? Never, never stopped. So you are still in the Dark Ages. You are still in time of war. Our people climbed out of this, and what climbed us out of this is the knowledge of the Degani Diohade, which is not an agreement just between people. The Degani Diohade is a derivative of what makes us up. And what makes us up, each of our bodies, everything in creation, our genetic blueprint is made up of DNA. And we know of DNA today. Non-native science can identify DNA. But anybody with a brain doesn't have to have that PhD, doesn't have to have non-native science tell them about DNA. You can look at this right here, and then you can look at this right here. Doesn't take a genius to figure out DNA, the opposites, the two opposites. Well, it seems like in a non-native society, well, there's no geniuses apparently. That they can't figure this out, they can only stay locked in war. But here, I am very proud of my ancestors because they were geniuses. Based on the concept of DNA and the necessity to work together, to have a balance. This is the structure of DNA itself. The Two Row Wampum is that derivative. It's the agreement between two opposites of how to work together in this world in balance. And so that's where our people came to the realization of, yeah, we're in the Dark Ages, we're killing each other. It's crazy, stupid behavior. We woke up out of that behavior because of the Degani Diohade. Now, we took that concept 1,500 years after it was understood to establish the great peace amongst our people. And to establish the great peace, it must be in accordance with the law of creation. There is no disputing what the law of creation is. There is no interpretation. It is not like man-made law, where you have 100 different interpretations for one word, and within a judicial system, that one word will have you confused, locked in chaos, chasing your tail around like a dog in circles forever. Whereas, within the reality of people, that in order to come to peace, to evolve, that the law of creation is that our mothers are primary. Our mothers are first. The women are the power. The men only represent under the authority of the women. And it was through the knowledge of the Degani Diohade which established the great peace amongst the 5 nations confederacy. Stopped 5 nations from killing themselves, from committing suicide. So that behavior saved us, brought us out of the Dark Ages. For 1,500 years we had peace. And you know what kind of peace it was, because when you came here, you were in awe of the peace between people. And what that peace between people establishes upon the land. What it establishes upon the land is a beauty and a richness so vibrant that it cannot be found anywhere else except where there is great peace. And again, to have great peace, our mothers must be in power as the authority. So, this is the way we lived. And when your ancestors came here, they seen this. Hey, the women were in power. Of course, your women love that, because your women, the women in the non-native world, have been oppressed, raped, and murdered for thousands of years. Completely denying, the male denying the female power of creation. And therefore, denying and refusing to have a balance in this world. Men have refused that balance in the non-native world. And by refusing that balance, men destroy the people that need that balance. So who's the first people that the men destroy? The women. How did they destroy them? Through their false man-made religions, identifying that the women, for being women, doing what they do. What do? They are the doctors. They are the psychiatrists, the psychologists. They are the teachers. They are the shaman, the leaders, the spiritual leaders of our peoples. All peoples. But the male, he's got some kind of complex that he's afraid of the woman's power. But he's got a problem because he gets his life force from the women. So there is some mental block in the male dominant mind that prevents him from seeing the reality of where he came from, where he was born from. His false man-made concept of the male self-glorification process of creating God in man's image. God is a man. When this is done, there is a tragic process. It's tragic. And that process is knowing that we have two hemispheres of our brain. The tragic process is that we choose to cancel out the most important side of our brain. And we choose to dysfunction under the male side of our brain, the male dominant side. So solely, our whole thinking process, we have two sides. You know, your thoughts should go from one side to the other, and one side will say, hey, yeah, that's a good thought, it's okay. Instead, we have these thoughts that go nowhere, just spin around in circles in one side of our head and have only one possible outcome. The outcome that they set out to do in the first place. And if it is out of balance, you don't have the balance between the two hemispheres to decide something, then it is always, of course, the wrong decision. So within the male dominant world, always the wrong decision. And the wrong decision was to come here under the pretense of war. Because no matter what you think, you did not come here in peace. And if you are here now, you are not here in peace. There's only one way that you can be here in Turtle Island in peace. And that is if you are currently in a two-row wampum relationship with the original peoples. This is the only way you can be here in my home in peace. No other way. So, of course, the non-native world, they are hell-bent on their destructive path. Doesn't matter how much common sense you speak to them. Doesn't matter how much truth you show to them. They are hell-bent on suicide. So, that suicide, we've seen that, and we had to present the Degani Diohode, and that is in the past. That's 1616, that's 400 years ago. 401 years ago right now. How is that a reality today? The non-native world is unaware that this two-row wampum is flowing all around you through your political and judicial system. You're just unaware of it. Over the years, since contact, there's a big history. I don't have to tell you all that history. You know none of it. None of it is any good. Not one single event that has happened, interaction between the non-native and the native, none of it, coming from the native, has been any good. It has all been bad. All destructive. So, over that time, in the destructive behavior in the non-native world, the disrespect that they show, not only to people, doesn't matter to me. I'm not a crybaby. I'm not gonna cry, hey, stop beating me up, because you ain't beating me up. You're beating yourself up. You are destroying your own identity. Your own humanity is what is paying the cost, paying the price. I am still here. I am still in my garden. I am still in my ceremonies. I am still in my identity. You must ask yourself, what identity do you carry? if you know of Stephen Harper's apology for kidnapping, raping, and murdering children under the native residential school policy, then you'll know some of that tragic history. But through that process, they identified an apology for killing the Indian in the child. Now, killing the Indian in the child is identifying something that the words that he uses is doublespeak, so that you don't know what he is identifying. What is the Indian in the child? Identity. What is the Indian in the child? What is that Indian's identity? Well, when you know that the British Crown set out to have actual policies that identified natives singing and dancing, that they identified their superintendent of so-called Indian affairs to dissuade the natives from singing and dancing, carrying out their ceremonies. That was official policy. It's not something I'm making up. And how do you think that those Indian agents were to dissuade me from carrying out my songs, my ceremonies, my dances? Well, they weren't going to come up to me and say, hey, will you please stop doing that? No. And they wouldn't even come up to me and say, take my drum away, or break up my ceremony and say, stop doing this. No. How they would dissuade us from carrying that out is by killing the people. That is the official policy of your government. You vote in that government. And you can say, hey, that was 150 years ago. Well, if you are carrying out the exact same behavior that somebody started 150 years ago, then you are guilty of that exact same behavior. You don't see it as carrying out that behavior. But like I said, as long as you are here in my home, you are here illegally. And everything that you do is illegal and corrupt, unless you are in a Two Row Wampum relationship with the original peoples. As a result of some of those things that the non-native people are inflicting upon the land, I won't talk about what's happening, what you've done to my people. I'll talk about what you have done to the land, because that's what I relate to. That's who I communicate with. And what you have done to the land is unforgivable. There is no way you can do what you have done and think that you are going to get away with it. It is impossible. You are very shortly going to experience the rubber band effect, where you stretch it out as long as you can. There will be the point where it'll get to critical mass, or its breaking point, or its snapping point, and it will just come back and slap you in the face. Well, this is what is about to happen. But along the way, how the Two Row Wampum is all around you today is through that process of residential schools, which is a military maneuver. It's important for you to know that they didn't just kidnap children, bring them away from their homes, rape them, molest them, murder them, change their identity. They didn't just do that. There was something else behind that. And what is behind that is something so dark and sinister that you choose to not be aware of it. So dark and sinister that, of course, these things were done in the name of God. Your God. Your God told you to kidnap, rape, and murder children. You have a good God. And you are good just like your God. You are just as good as your God. And so, your God tells you and gives you the right to wage war, gives you the right to kill people, gives you the right to create nuclear power, gives you the right to even go and to start to destroy our grandmother moon. You have the right to do anything you want, apparently. You are lawless. You have no law. You have no conscience. What human is like that? Lawless, no respect, do not care what the things that they break, do not care to fix the things that they break, no conscience about any of this. That is not a human. You have been made to be subhuman. An abomination of the human spirit has been done to you. I do not say that you are the guilty party. I say that what is happening to me has first been done to you. But through watching your behavior towards me, then you could decipher who you are, what your identity is. Are you a kidnapper? Are you a child rapist? Are you a child murderer? Every time you vote in the Canadian political system, that's exactly what you are doing. This is your identity. You have cognitive dissonance to your reality you have created. Along the way, what they've done to these children in the residential schools, it was under the military maneuver. It's an early Roman practice. Look this up yourself. Don't believe me. Look it up yourself and prove this to be wrong. There is an early Roman maneuver. It goes back thousands of years. And what that military maneuver is called a fifth column. What is the fifth column? Because you have four columns, comes from four directions. Where is the fifth direction? The fifth direction is internal. What the early Romans used to do, they'll send their four columns from all the directions as a threat. They wouldn't actually have to go in and kill right away. They'd use a threat because they had their fifth column that would defeat the people that they are invading. And where the fifth column was inside of the people. How did they get it inside of the people? Well, the early Roman practice to carry out the military maneuver of a fifth column, you needed an element, a very important element. Children. Children. What the early Romans used to do is kidnap the children of their enemies or of the people that they want to invade. Kidnap their children, bring them into Roman court, raise them in Roman court, fill their mind with all the lies, all the corruption, and then send those children back home once their minds are changed, once their identity is changed. They'll send their children back home, and then when the Romans came to invade, the people in that community would look for somebody who knows something about the Romans. Well, who do you think it was? It was the children that the Romans kidnapped and filled their mind with the garbage, put inside of those people, and so they did not realize what they are, what they were. They were corrupted, and they were a traitor to their own people, treasonous to their own people. So that early Roman behavior is a military maneuver that has been inflicted upon the native children here, my children. This is not, it's quite simply a religious act, because in order to have the residential schools, it went all the way up to that guy that you called the Pope, all the way up to him, to say, yes, kidnap, molest, rape, murder children. That is the behavior within that system anyways. That is that religion. To always, always prey upon the children. That's what they have always done. And so, when they did this here, in the residential schools, then they sent these people back into our communities. And those people, of course, then started to fill the elected Indian Act band councils, which is a puppet regime of the British Crown, placed here to destroy us. So right now, in this day and age, anybody that you know that is a part of the elected Indian Act Band Council, part of the so-called Assembly of First Nations, those are not Native people. I don't care if they speak their language. I don't care what they say to you. They have pledged their allegiance to that woman that you call the queen. And in pledging their allegiance, they are enemy to me. And by participating in the false man-made governmental system of democapitalism, they left their identity of being matrilineal to pick up the poison of male dominance. So those people in the elected band councils and the Assembly of First Nations, when you're talking to them thinking you are talking to Native, you are not. You are talking to yourself. But they look Native. And if you're lucky enough to find one that looks Native, then that person, his mind is so corrupted that when you're talking to them, looking at them, thinking that they are Native, I will guarantee you that their actions or their words will sound like what I am saying right now. But their actions will be the exact opposite, because they are participants in a corrupt governmental system that is your system, and you know how corrupt that system is. So every non-Native person should tell every Native person who is in the corruption of the elected Indian Act Band Council system, you should tell them, hey, get back home into your own system. Get back to your matrilineal identity. What kind of man are you to turn your back on your mother and to pick up the poison that has come here from across the great waters? These are not men. And the women that are in there, they are not women. They are not our women. They are not our men. They belong to you, not us. They are yours. And so, they are yours because of it is their choice. It is choice. Today, where we are at, in this day and age, at this time, it is everybody's choice to be where you are at, to be doing what you are doing. So the level of destruction that you are connected to, this is your choice. You inflict cognitive dissonance within yourself so that you don't realize, you don't want to accept that you have made this choice. You want to believe that it is inflicted upon you, that it's the governments that are doing this to you. No. Who is your government? Who puts your government there? You do. There is no oppression from a government. There is your own cognitive dissonantly instilled in you false governmental system that corrupts everything about you. Because those who are cognitive dissonant, by nature, you are corrupt. You like corruption because you are greedy. And in order for your greed to be fulfilled, the only way it can be fulfilled is within a corrupt society. A corrupt society with corrupt laws, with corrupt governmental system. It is that corrupt governmental system that began in the mid-80s. Actually began in 1982. The biggest money bill in Canadian history. And for those of you that know how Parliament works, you know there's difference between money bills and regular bills. Money bills have to start in the Senate. Regular bills goes to MPs. Money bills is anything that has to do with the pirates stealing more treasure. So the biggest money bill was a native self-government policy. And it was a blanket policy right across so-called Canada. And that's what the government was inflicting upon the native people. And it was, I forget who it was. It may have been Chrétien at the time, or whoever else. It doesn't matter. It was the Prime Minister. He identified that he did not want to negotiate self-government with 100 different native groups. He wanted to negotiate with one. And so, the Prime Minister of Canada created the Assembly of First Nations and appointed the sellout George Erasmus to be the first so-called Grand Poobah of the Assembly of First Nations. Representing what? If you are put into place by your enemy to be within your people, who are you representing? That's what George Erasmus was. That's what every band counselor is. They are nothing but traitorous sellouts to our people, where when you speak to them, you will never get the true sentiment of Native people, which is why the government put them in place, so that when the government wants to take our land, wants to steal our treasure, our ceremonies, our laws, our culture, they go to the elected band council, who will sell anything. They will sell their own mother. And this is not something I'm making up. This is a fact that has already happened here in Kahnawake, in recent years, since 2010. Here in the Montreal area, people are aware that Highway 30 was coming through on the South Shore, and there was a special agreement that was made by the elected mayor of Kahnawake, whose name was he was some Dalil guy. He's a big guy. I forget his name. Anyways, this was just a couple of years ago. He made an agreement with the Premier of Quebec to sell out our land, to agree to put that highway through farmlands that non-native people were living on, which had the outcome of making the non-native people realize that the native people are liars, that we don't. So in that policy of native self-government, there was, this is the answer from the House of Parliament, stated Thursday, January 20th, 1994. So don't believe me? Go and look it up on your computer. Look at the answer from the House of Parliament, January 20th, 1994. What is happening is there's a discussion on the floor about Aboriginal affairs, where a Mr. Chuck Straw, everybody must know him now today, he's come a long ways. This is, again, don't forget, 1994, and we are now in 2017, so 23 years ago. Chuck Straw from Fraser Valley East is asking, Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development, which at the time was Ron Irwin. They talk about, let's see, the minister is quoted in yesterday's Toronto Sun as saying that the government will have plans for native self-government in place within 6 months. January 1994, February, March, April, May, June, July. By July 1994. Could the minister tell the members of the House and the people of Canada, indeed, the Aboriginal people themselves, precisely what is meant by self-government? Now, there's a little bit of discussion in there, but I'll get right to the point of what the issue is here. Honorable Ron Irwin, Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development. Mr. Speaker, I was asked that question last night on CBC, to which I responded that it was a tough question. It still is. We do not look at this as creating a third level of government. We look at this as developing what exists from the Two Row Wampum treaties of hundreds of years ago. Now listen to this next part very carefully. They identify Two Row Wampum treaties of hundreds of years ago. It is based on. And then he says, what exists from the Two Row Wampum treaties hundreds of years ago through the Constitution. Now this is Ron Irwin, Minister of Indian Affairs for so-called Canada, and he's saying through the Constitution. What Constitution is he talking about? He then goes on to say that through the Constitution, the Gruen case and the Sparrow case to what we have today. The policy of this government is that the inherent right of self-government exists. It is something we are committed to and something we intend to implement fairly and justly within 4 years. Now, identifies first Two Row Wampum treaties hundreds of years ago. That is very clear what that means. Very clear. Not going to go into a whole explanation because, like we said, it's based on the Guyana Rasa Goa. It is very clear to me what it is based on because I created that. That is my blood that created this. I understand it, what it means. It means that the people who entered into contract with me are bound to the Guyana Rasa Goa, the Great Law of Peace. Now, when he takes it from a nation level, and then he says through the Constitution, okay, here's the nation level. Sorry to do this, but I got to use an example. You're there, so I'm going to use you as the example.
At your own risk.
We'll say the government is saying Two Row Wampum. Through the Constitution, the Two Row Wampum, I am on this side. The government is on that side. Through the Constitution. Which Constitution? So, he says we do not look at this as creating a third level of government. We look at this as developing what exists from the Two Row Wampum treaties of hundreds of years ago through the Constitution, the Gruen case, and the Sparrow case to what we have today. So when he says this, again, use this example. This is the Two Row Wampum. If you could imagine Mary Claude being the government says, identifies the Two Row Wampum. This is nation. And within that nation, my nation recognizes your nation. What does that mean? I got to respect everything within your nation, within your people. Your ways, I do not have to like your ways, but I have to respect you. I have to work with you. This means that we are engaged in dialogue forever. The only time we will not be engaged in dialogue is when this is broken. And when this is broken, there will be no peace, because this Two Row Wampum is a peace treaty. Which means, okay, we are exact opposites. And we know that back then, we were killing each other. We got to the stage of where we would have annihilated each other. The non-native people couldn't kill all our people. And we didn't even want to kill one single one of you. We were forced into it. Your actions forced it to happen. But we didn't just say, okay, their actions are too much, we're going to go and kill them. No, it was defense. This is self-defense what has happened over the past 500 years between us. But anyways, when this was created, it was created to engage us in dialogue, to establish a peaceful process of resolving our differences. That is the beauty of the Two Row Wampum. It is a process of how to resolve opposing viewpoints or opposing whatever. So anyways, it establishes nation, it establishes respect of one another, it acknowledges, I acknowledge your laws within you. You acknowledge my laws within me and within my domain. Where is my domain? What did this Two Row Wampum mean? For you to be here upon this land. It quite simply meant we did not sell you land. We did not trade you land. There is not a native person who ever had the concept of selling land. You cannot sell what does not belong to you, and you cannot sell your mother. In your society, you are used to this. You are used to selling your mother. And so, this recognizes my laws within my domain, which is everywhere, because it's my land. It's my domain everywhere. You have your laws only within your house that is permitted to be in my land. So your laws are not to seep outside of your house. Your laws are for your own internal problems, your own internal issues. But there is this agreement that if you ever need help, that I am bound by law to come and help you. And vice versa. If I ever need help, you are bound by law to come and help me. So anyways, it establishes all of those protocols. So when Ron Irwin says, through the Constitution, you got to understand, here is established between us recognition. When he says through the Constitution, he pulls me onto his side out of the Two Row Wampum. So now the Two Row Wampum isn't even there, because through the Constitution he places me in his Constitution. And then Constitution, that's like we could say on first, this is duality, two nations. Then we could say Constitution within the government side, that is one nation. So they put me under their nation. And so then from there, when he says through the Constitution, the Gruen case and the Sparrow case. So here you have this first, it's scrapped because he places me under his Constitution. And then Constitution, you could say that's national. Then he takes it from national, Constitution level, and says the Gruen case, which is judicial. Takes it first from nation, international, to one plurality, and then from that whittles it down further through the judicial process. Your laws, which are in your boat, takes me and puts me in your laws in the Gruen case, and then takes it down even further through the Sparrow case. Now you have to know what the Gruen case and the Sparrow case is. Both of them, doesn't matter. The fact is that native people in non-native court is recognizing that so-called woman you call the queen. Now in recognizing that they are under that authority, the individuals scrap the Two Row Wampum. So when Ron Irwin states that we look at this as developing what exists from the Two Row Wampum treaties of hundreds of years ago, he is a bald-faced liar. A liar. Because to develop from, that means you take something. If I was going to develop something from this, it would be rooted in this. It would be in its foundation. So when he says from the Two Row Wampum, through the Constitution, the Canadian Constitution, whatever that is, when you're in a monarchy, there's no Constitution. When you have a Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, that pledges his allegiance to the so-called Queen, then you don't even have what you believe as a democracy. You can't have a constitution when you have a monarch ruling over you. There is no constitution. So to say through the Constitution takes us into a realm of non-existence fantasy. It is a fantasy world. But then from the fantasy world locks it into, through their own judicial process, locks us into becoming criminals. Hence, all native people across so-called Canada have been criminalized. All native people are criminals. Why is that? Because as Stephen Harper said, to kill the Indian and the child, to kill the identity. What is the identity? To protect the land. Through the Gruen case, through the Constitution, no one can protect the land. You cannot protect the land. And if native people are in your boat, they cannot protect the land. So, I am a criminal because I will protect the land, and what will happen is you're the CEO of Mining Company X, and Mining Company X has complete rights and laws over the people who own the land. Here, you own the land, you're in, let's say you're in Gaspésie, you're in Anticosti, you're in anywhere else. And along comes Mining Company X, who isn't even from so-called Canada. That is some multinational from somewhere else, maybe China or somewhere else, Belgium. And they come in to Anticosti, they come into Gaspésie, right under your house, right under your land, and they come to take out and extract the life force from 6 inches beneath the surface of where you live. That's their right above you. And so, when that happens, the native people say, hey, wait a minute, no, we can't do this. Native people will go there and end up getting arrested. Because through the Constitution, through the Guerin case, they do not recognize this nation, which means that we are not subject to your laws. Because your laws are corrupt. You're corrupt, your government is corrupt. Misery loves company, which means corruption wants to bring everybody into corruption. According to your own understanding of democracy, you do not have the right to say that I must be corrupt. I must not be corrupt like you. I must not be like you. I will never be like you. Never. I will never rape my mother. You have no problem raping your mother because you have no law. Nothing to tell you that what you are doing is wrong. And so all of you, all the people, you can determine easily what's right and wrong. The people want to fight this, what's happening to the world, not just what's happening here in Gaspésie or Anticosti. The people want to fight what's happening to our Mother Earth. They want to stop what they are doing. What they are doing is they are locked into a process. They have politically shackled themselves, tied themselves to corruption, where your governmental system is intrinsic. Corruption is intrinsic to it. It is the foundation, the cornerstone of your government, which is the way that you think, how you come to collective decisions. Collective is made up of all the individuals within your society, so it means the way that you think. As an individual, your thinking process is corrupt. If it wasn't, the world would not be in the mess that it's in. The world is in this mess where people in Anticosti have to worry about is some foreign company going to come in there and destroy what they view as their land. It's my land, but you know what? You're living there. I got no problem with you living there. The native people will never tell you to go home. There are stupid people in your society, most of them politicians, most of them religious people, who say to you, oh yeah, if native people got their rights, what are you going to say? Tell us all to go home? These are stupid people with pea brains that have no solutions to anything except just to keep themselves in power to continue to do the destruction. Because if they actually address the things that needed to be addressed, you would find out that we have been nothing but your friend for 500 years. And you will find out that you have been no one's friend for 500 years. No one's friend. You are finding your fate to be the same as what you are seeing in the United States and Donald Trump. It's coming to fruition, your actions. Because you think you're in Canada, you think Justin Trudeau represents you. That's not true. He pledged his allegiance to the Queen. So, the Queen, that one that calls herself the Queen, she represents you. But her puppet, Donald Trump in the United States, that's her main source of income. So this is the true thing that is leading you, the true person. And we say, finally, you finally got the true face of the people that came here. Finally, Trump shows you. The pirate captain shows you the truth, the ugliness of what you are. And now, you want to say no. You want to separate yourself from the United States, from Donald Trump. You cannot separate yourself from him because he represents you. You just don't know it, that Britain is the it's a company. And so-called Canada is a subsidiary, as is other places throughout the so-called United Kingdom. Australia is a subsidiary. And this company, its business is to make money. And so it puts its companies, its subsidiaries around the world. And its primary flagship moneymaker is the United States. So all the pirate fleet flies to that tune. They all go to the same tune, which the United States is leading under the authority of Britain. And so all of this, what people wants to separate themselves from, you cannot separate yourself from that as long as you are within a political system. As long as you are brainwashed into the male self-glorification process of man creating God in man's image. As long as you are dysfunctioning under these lies, these false beliefs, then you will never have a balance between the reality of DNA. And in DNA, like all things, if you start walking, there's going to be a first step. And in DNA, there was a first strand to the double helix. And what that first strand was is the primary, the female. The female is the primary. As long as you're in this false belief of God is male and God created man, and like an afterthought, women were created to keep him company, as long as you're in that belief, you will continue in corruption and destruction and on your suicidal path. There is a way to get out of this. There is a way to protect the lands of Anticosti. How do you, who are living in Anticosti or in Gaspésie, protect the land? How you protect the land? Only one way. Is through the Deganidio the Two Row Wampum, because it establishes nationhood. Now how can you access that if the federal government has already destroyed it through its self-government policy? No, excuse me. Here in Quebec, the Quebecois, you have something very unique that nobody else has in the world, that nobody else has here in so-called Canada. Under the so-called native self-government policy, which Ron Irwin identified, and it's there in the minutes of the Hansard of Thursday, January 20, 1994, identifying self-government based on the Two Row Wampum Treaty. That's at the foundation, the Two Row Wampum. What is unique about Quebec is that Quebec is the only province, and only for here in Kahnawake, with the Kahnawake Band Council, that Quebec was brought in as a signature to the native self-government policy. Only Quebec, not Ontario, not the other provinces, just Quebec. What's the purpose for that? Of course, well, this is a British policy, so we know that the purpose of bringing Quebecois into the native self-government, when Quebecois is not native, why would they be a signature? Because Britain devised the native self-government policy to kill two birds with one stone. To kill its old enemy, the French, because the French in France are no longer actual enemy to Britain. They are enslaved to Britain. They got to do everything exactly what Britain says. Here is the remnants of the French who carry that spirit of resistance, and it's filtered into the land and into the people. And as we intermarried, matrilineal combined with that resistance makes you Quebecois very unique in the world. And your political reality makes you even more unique. The political reality of the province of Quebec becoming a signature to the native self-government policy in 1999, which was signed here in Kahnawake at the Kahnawake Golf Club. That means that you, Quebecois, not 400 years in the past, just as early as 1999, which is only 18 years ago, if you're 18 years old now and you're in Quebec, you have the right to vote about something that is very important that happened just around the time you were born. That Quebec in modern times is a signature, is a party to the Two Row Wampum Peace Treaty. That means Quebec has nation status. But the only way they will have nation status is through the Two Row Wampum. Now, the government locked you in, tricked you, Quebecois. You were tricked. The same way that you were tricked in your last elections here when Pauline Marois was in. Everybody in Quebec thought they knew what they were doing by participating in the same political system you believed in for generations. But what did it do to you? It pulled the rug right out from underneath you, and Quebecois has lost their identity since the last elections. You can argue all you want that you still got it, but look around you and see what is happening. Your power is diluting. Your political power, even under democracy, to vote and to have a majority is now gone. So your only power, Quebecois, to come back into the world in identity and to take your place, to start to defend and protect our Mother Earth, your only path is to the Two Row Wampum. Because the Two Row Wampum identified respect and all of this stuff, but you can see through the Hansard minutes what the federal government's plan was. It was to subdue the native people. Which native people? The people that had their minds changed through residential school policies, who adopted the Indian Act system. Who was this Two Row Wampum made with? It was made with the traditional chiefs of the Ganyangahaga. It was made with me. It was not made with Bank Council. So think of this, if you make a contract, I make a contract with Mary Claude, and I start negotiating it with Mary Jo. How is that? It's not Mary Claude. If I negotiated with somebody else, Mary Jo, why would I do that? Think of this. Why would I negotiate with another party? Will that other party insist on getting more from my side? Why would I negotiate with that? I would only negotiate with another party if it is beneficial to me, if I can get more from them. So this is the reason why, of course, the British Crown, that woman they call the Queen, placed these sellout puppets, these treasonous people within the elected Indian Act Bank Council, who do not represent our people, who have no access to the Two Row Wampum, puts them in place and then says, okay, we're going to negotiate the Two Row Wampum with you. While I am sitting here with the Two Row Wampum. While these traitors, like Joe Norton, the elected mayor of Ganawagi, sell everything away and change their identity and destroy the land. And you on the outside are watching a lie take place, but you are thinking and believing, because what you are seeing is that the native people are responsible for destroying the land. It's not the native people. It's the people in the elected band council. They are identityless. They are not native people. So, Quebecois, you want to protect the land? You have access. It is the only way to protect the land throughout the world. Because throughout the world, the empire, the British Empire, which is the only empire, has spread its power everywhere, into every country. Spread its evil, its corruption, into every country. And if you think you are separate from it, you're fooling yourself. Here in Quebec, you want to protect the land. What do? Well, you form a non-profit organization. That's what you do. And the moment you do that, you're subdued. Because to form that non-profit organization, it's under that woman you call the Queen. It's under her rules, under her laws. And you can only function and protect the land underneath your non-profit organization as long and as far as she says you can. So within that structure, you are powerless, absolutely powerless to protect the land. But you are getting to the point of critical mass where you know that you have to protect the land at all costs because you're killing yourself now. So you are finding the only option, and that is come back to the original agreement, your identity. So Quebecois, you have a situation here on hand that you're unaware of. I'll guarantee you, you're going to find this out come the next elections. You're going to see that Quebec is a completely different country than what you expected it or what you knew it to be just last year or just before your last elections. It's going to be completely different now. You're already seeing the face change. You're already seeing the people change. The atmosphere of so-called Quebec is changing. So you want to do something. You want to protect yourself, you want to protect the land. This is your access. The Two Row Wampum, again, because Quebecois, you're a signature to the Two Row Wampum since 1999. Now what you ask yourself, what is your identity? Two Row Wampum is to respect. You are supposed to respect my identity. You are supposed to observe the laws, the agreements between us. You know that woman they call the Queen, that British Empire is an enemy to life itself. And so, enemy to me, wants to destroy me. You know that. You have been doing the work for the British Crown for 500 years to destroy me. Now you find out you are destroying your only friend. So we have ally. We have reason to be allied together. But there is a common enemy. And that common enemy has been your enemy for generations. Is it Britain? Or is it just the way that they think? It's just the way that they think. So it's really not Britain. What it is the power that is destroying our Mother Earth today. And this is democapitalism. This is the illusion of democracy. Compromising all the people, all its citizens, and handing them over to capitalism. So you are in democapitalism. And everything that touches, it turns to crap. It destroys everything. And so this is the power that Britain has over you, to lock you into the process of destruction. So Quebecois, ask yourself this. Do you respect other people's identities? I'll tell you right now, the history of you is that no, you do not respect other people's identities. And I'll say something that you might find insulting, that you haven't even respected your own identity. You have not been true to your own ancestors. I have remained true to your ancestors. I am still locked and bound into contract with your identity. You are just outside of your identity. And so we cannot communicate. You need to get back into your identity and say, hey, wait a minute. Quebecois, we respect people. We do not oppress people. We respect the native people. Why? Because we saved your lives. Because we gave you place to live, place to stay, in freedom. Gave your women freedom. Gave you the concept of freedom, because what you don't know is you never ever had the concept of freedom before you came here. So we helped you in many ways. And in turn, you have not helped us. Not one bit. But now, we have an opportunity, not to help each other, but to band together against our common enemy that is destroying the only thing that we have in common, our Mother Earth. If we do not bind together, then you will die, and we will die. So we need each other. And we say, Quebecois, you must separate. you must separate from the insanity of the rest of the world. But not based on the separation that you have perceived in the past. You cannot base a separation on language. You cannot base a separation, have a separation, and then yet the very next day have the same political system, the same education system, the same economic system, the same religious systems. That's not a separation. If you did that, all you would be is feudal. That's infantile. We must be adult. And Quebec must separate from the rest of the world based on humanity. Where all humans from around the world can come here to exercise humanity. Where people will have their voice. Where consensus will exist. Where women will have their power recognized and affirmed and exercised. Freedom for humans. Quebec could be, depends on you, the place in the world that saves our humanity, which is very desperately needed right now. And how you do this? Give you an example. Look at what happened in Crimea. Now people say, at the end of the day, you know, there was a lot of espionage, there was some violence in there, but what did the people do at first? The people filled the government offices. They just went in there. They didn't go in with guns or anything. Filled the public offices, the public spaces, and you know what? They said, this is who we are. Who are the Quebecois? Are you kidnappers? Are you rapists? Are you murderers? This could be in your past, yes. But everybody was tricked into the situation. We were tricked too. We were tricked into a war with you. We acknowledge that that war was wrong. But we do not just say that war is wrong, we reach out to fix. Because we are responsible for everything that happens in our bloodline. And those wars or something that happened hundreds of years ago are not to go uncorrected. They are to be corrected. And we are not to remember the wars. We are to remember the peace that we form that comes out of war. You know the necessity for peace. So we are to celebrate the peace that we must build between us for the purposes of saving our Mother Earth. So how's Quebecois going to do it? You're not going to be able to do it now through democracy because you are now outnumbered. There's not enough Quebecois now anymore to say, hey, have a vote. Because you're going to lose. The same way that you lost the last vote. If you want humanity to come forward, you're going to have to do something that you have never done before. You're going to have to assert humanity into your governmental offices. You're going to have to do the same thing. Fill your offices and say, hey, this is not Quebecois. If that government is yours, tell them what Quebecois identity is. And tell them, remind them that you were locked into the Two Row Wampum in 1999. And that you must start respecting the Two Row Wampum. And that means recognition of who is the landowners here. You haven't accepted the realities for some reason. You're in my home. What would you do if I went to your house, just started living in your living room and isolated you just to your bathroom, and I started eating your food and sleeping in your bedroom? Think of that type of behavior. Think of what you look like to the rest of the world. What kind of human does that? It's not a human that does that. It's like an attack dog. You've just been an attack dog for that empire of Britain, for the pirate empire. And so, here we are. You push that Two Row Wampum, recognition of the land, ownership of the land is ours, recognition of our identity, protector of the land. So, when you recognize this, you recognize that you are in our land, and you are under the guidance here of our canoe, and in our canoe is the great law of peace. And so when you have an issue like nuclear power, you cannot do that. You don't have the right. You must ask us what you can do in our house. And we will tell you, nope, no nuclear power. And that means you don't build nuclear power. That means you don't commit suicide. Imagine somebody you know committed suicide. Imagine if they said to you the day before or an hour before, if they killed themselves for, say, slitting their wrists with a razor blade. Imagine if they asked you, said to you, I want to buy a razor blade so I can slit my wrists. What would you say? What would you do? Would you be a human? Would you stop them? Well, this is the reality of where we are at. We are being confronted not with environmental issues. We are being confronted with our own humanity, or lack of humanity. You may not see it as that. I don't care if nobody believes me or believes it, but that's exactly what it is. We are all engaged in the struggle of a lifetime in the entire universe. Life has never been in this situation. This is the first time in the universe that we are confronted with our humanity, with our self, to stop the suicide we are carrying out, to stop the murders of the future generations. Just stop killing. Just stop killing the future generations. Just stop taking the food out of their mouth. And you will be walking in this world in balance. And then maybe, out of our allyship, maybe we will become friends. Maybe you will see that we were always here to be your friend. Nothing else. If you think we are your enemy, then you are completely lost in the world. You have no chance to save yourself. But we are your friend. We hold out our hand, always, still do, despite all the facts that point to otherwise, that I shouldn't extend my hand, that we should not, the native people should not try to be your friends. We got all the facts, all the history there to substantiate that position. But now, this is your choice. Either you're going to accept the status quo the way it is, and you're going to watch your own society deteriorate, not over years, over the next couple of months. And here we are in July, mid-July 2017. Over the next couple of months, by the time we get to October, you're going to watch your society here deteriorate so much, you're going to be crying, and you're going to wish that you would have taken action even just a week ago. This is your time. It is not tomorrow. This is your time. It is time to step up to bat. It is time. Take the action that no one else will. It's time to bite the hand that feeds you. And we'll be there with you. We'll help you. We're not smarter than you. We don't have all the solutions. We know that we are going to be walking into the darkness, and we're not going to know where we're going. This is something, a trail that has never been blazed before. We have to be brave, and I know that in your identity, your ancestors, imagine how brave they were to cross the ocean the way that they did. What they put up with, what they were running from. It is time for you to honor your ancestors and to keep their identity alive, because they are crying out to you right now. Right now. Time of action is here for all people upon our Mother Earth. Not just for Quebecois, not just for French speaking, but to honor all people's identities, to honor all languages, so that we will be one family again and be able as one family to stop this empire of Britain that is destroying the entire earth. Two Row Wampum. That's the only